प्रथम स्टार्ट कर डाल से मत लगाई लो वीडियो को जस्ट स्टार्ट कर गुड मॉर्निंग को आगे को
Good morning, everyone. So today we are here to discuss about how to plan a startup, its legal and ethical steps. So I hope this will be a great helpful for you in future. So the presentation will first start by our faculty member, Jennifer ma'am. Ma'am, please.
PPT.
How to plan? How to plan or plan for a startup. So currently India is a very hub for booming startup. So you can see that India is coming up with a lot of startups nowadays. So let's know that how can we actually start or plan for a startup. So first and foremost, what we need is an idea. So like the idea has a slogan for an idea can change the world. So after that idea, we have to have a business plan. Then no business can fund actually without any kind of fundings in it. So if you're looking for fundings in it, we have to look for investors. After that, investors just come up with location because without location we cannot set up a business. Thirdly, we have a market plan that is whatever startup we have, if it is not successful, to make a startup successful, we have to actually look for a market plan because it's the market that we have to enter. Then only our startup can flourish, right? So second, we have build a customer base, and third is plan to change. Plan to change is like a startup can survive only when it is actually looking for adaptability. Now, every startup, be it mobile phones, be it any kind of product, has to change with time. Like how to change with time, it will be looked after by how trending the current scenario of the market it is. Second, we have, yeah, to start with a great idea. So first and foremost, we have to start with a great idea, any kind of idea. The first step in learning is how to start a business is to identify a problem and a solution. Now, if you have an idea, for example, if you have an idea about water purifier, now in this current scenario, we have a water scarcity problem everywhere. So if you don't have a water purifier, now this purifier can be only access to people who are having a very more than lower middle class family. But what about those people who are actually living in poverty? So that's why we can come up with, for example, we can come up with idea which will have a water purifier and its solution is a very low cost. So first we need to identify the problem, that is what are the problems which are missing in the market and what are the solution towards it. So this is because successful startup begin from business idea that fill the needs of a group of customers. So like you say that an idea can change the world, it's the idea slogan. But your idea does not always have to be a new one. You can update existing product or services in a way that's better for the customer. So one of the most famous example is your Apple. So we all know that Steve Jobs has started his idea based on. So we all know that Steve Jobs has actually started his idea on a based on garage. If you have all seen the Steve Jobs movie, so his original idea was actually for a computer, and hence created enhanced versions that better fit the market. They've also continued to evolve new products like iPhone and iPad, making them more useful with each update. One example is how they're adding a keyboard for iPad that will make them easier to use like a laptop. All these innovations by Apple had led them to being worth of over $1 billion. Now, one of the most fascinating thing about the iPad is you see this can be simple as we can entire simplify this as finding a new use for a product that customers already love. Now, adding a new feature. Now, Apple has actually done an excellent job in adding a new feature every time because every time you see a phone comes up, be it iPhone 1 and be it iPhone 2, this is going to increase the number of customers. That is the updated version. And people who are having, iPhones, they are going for iPhone 2 or iPhone 3 and so on. Always they are looking for an updated version. Why they are looking for updated version? Because adding a new feature. Now this is actually a crowd catcher and a crowd puller rule they are being used. So that is why now you see people who are having iPhone 1, they want to go to iPhone 2 or they don't want to go to iPhone 3. Why? Because every time iPhone actually comes up with adding a new feature. Now we have changing the product experience, which actually influence the market a lot. For example, if you talk about Samsung right now, currently we have seen the flip-flop phones which were actually 10 years, 12 years back. So Motorola was having flip-flop phones. Now, in the current market, although the price is too high, but people are going for changing the product experience. You see, it's a way for attracting the customer because now, if you see by the statistics, Samsung, the new flip-flop phone of Samsung is going in a very selling in a very high way because suddenly the flip-flop comes have also come into existence because people love change. People don't like to use the same product again and again with the same appearance. Why? Because human tendency is that they cannot, because it's a human tendency that we are going to get bored with the same kind of cloth wearing every day. It becomes a headache for people. So that is why, in order to remain consistent in any kind of startup that we are having, we need to have specially adding a new feature because people are going to go for new feature. For example, once in a time, Oppo came up with pop-up cameras, right? So they had new features. So the pop-up camera that was used in Oppo F series, it was a huge hit. Why? Because suddenly pop-up, it seems very exciting to the people. So, second, we have changing the product's appearance. In order to remain in the game, you have to change the product's appearance from time to time. Otherwise, people are going to get bored, right? Second, we have is make a business plan. Now we can have an idea, but how do we actually accelerate that idea if we don't have a proper business plan? It will be futile if we don't have a current systematic. Because, for example, lots of people, we all have idea, right? We all have different kinds of idea. I bet even now studying engineering, we are going to have different kinds of ideas here which we make with our friends. But how to make this idea come into true without having a proper business plan? So, second thing which we need in order to plan for a startup is a business plan. Now, once you have an idea, you want to start building a business plan that describes your products and services in detail. It should include information on your industry, operation, finances, and a market analysis. Now, you see, operation is very important because you see, the aim of that is Tata's Nano was that they wanted to make a car that is which is actually available to all kinds of people, that is the lower middle class people. So the main aim of Nano was to hit the market of lower middle class people, so that in India every family has the luxury of at least driving a car, their own car. But what happened is that they have to change the factory that they have set up. Due to some issues, the entire factory has to set up from one place to another place. So what happened? This actually raised the price of Nano towards a lakh, which was not the intention initially, because of the operation plan was not laid out properly. That is why Nano was a big failure in the market. Why? Because of the operation. Because the operation was not set up. Entire factory, the big dollar like crore factory, they have to shift from one place to another place. When they shifted their entire factory, what happened? The cost increases to a great height, and as a result, the product that was launched, Nano, was actually targeted for lower audience, but it came higher. Writing a business plan is also important for getting financing for your startup. Banks are more likely to give loans to companies that can clearly explain how they are going to use the money and why they need it. Now, if without finance, I don't think any startup can survive. So first thing first, most what we need in a startup rather than an idea is finance. Because most of the startups are going to fail if you don't have a certain kind of finance towards it. Second, we have secure funding for your startup. Now, for everything, even if you are saving money or even if you are buying food, even if you are aiming for buying a car, what we need is finance and funding. Now, without funding, no institution can run, and without funding, even your startup is going to fail. So, the cost of startup is different for every business owner. However, no matter where your costs are, you are likely to get startup financing from friends and family. Most startups are being started by 2 3 people, so that means we can finance ourselves from friends or family. Second, we have angel investors. Now, in case of venture capitalists and bank loans, nowadays banks are giving a huge amount of money or huge amount of loans so that we can find a startup. So we can actually, if we have an idea, we can implement it. But for implementing to most of the business stop. Why? Because the only thing is money. We are not being able to go forward because of the lack of capital investment. Now, if you don't get the right amount of funding or can't raise money for your business, you will risk, just like I have told already, that if you don't have any kind of money, that means if you don't have been able to pay your operating costs, we have hired a factory, right? All these factories will cost up a lack of money. Now, if we don't even have the money to operate our factory where our item will be generated from, then it is going to be a huge failure. So this may cause you to close your doors. In fact, it is estimated that 90% of startup fail because they run out of money. Now we have securing funding your startup Health Prize. Now this is I want to show to the young people that this Health Prize is actually uh, very important. Why? Most of the people don't know this. Now this Health Prize is actually being organized by Bill Clinton. So the Bill Clinton organization, they have set come up with Health Prize that every year, if you have any kind of idea or any kind of innovation, you can actually take part in Health Prize. So when you take part in Health Prize, if your uh, startup they like it very much, they are going to invest in you towards a huge amount of money. So Health Prize, they have a certain kind of theme towards it. So they are going to invest in Health Prize if you are being able to meet their any kind of and your startup, they are going to finance it. So Bill Clinton has the organization organizes First Prize every year all around the world. So it's a good opportunity actually for the young people if they have an idea and they don't know where to fund it, they can go and join in such kind of competitions, which is going to get secure if you win. Second, we have surround yourself with right people. Now, this surround yourself with right people, so there can be a lot of risks in starting a business. That's why we will need essential business advisors to help guide us along the way. Like we have attorneys, we have certified public accountant, insurance professionals, banker. Building the right startup team is especially important in the early stages of small businesses. This means we will want to carefully select a co-founder, contractor, initial employees, including remote workers. While finding the right people is very important for everyone because in most of the time what happens, there might come a case where your co-founders is going to abandon you. So when your co-founders is going to desert you, then automatically every kind of thing is going to fall into, instead of falling into place, it is going to break you. So choosing the right kind of people, making sure keeping all your legal documents is very important for filing starting of a startup, because there are cases where the co-founder is going to leave at some point of time. Now we have make sure that we are following all the legal steps, which is another important thing. Now, for any kind of startup, forget about being a startup. Even if you want to have a certain kind of shop, we need to have a trade license or business license. Otherwise, you are going to pay a very hefty amount of fine in your life. So, same thing here for designing your product to setting up your workplace, opening your dream. Startup can be a lot of fun, but before you financially enter the market, you will want to take the legal right step to give you the best chance of success, including applying for a business license. So for every kind of like shop that we are going to open, forget about startup, we are going to have a limited amount of business license. Otherwise, we have to pay a hefty amount of fund, or it will be considered as illegal, right? Or invalid. Registering your business name, getting a federal tax ID number, filing for a trademark, creating a separate bank account, familiarizing yourself with industry regulation, building contract for clients and others we plan to work with. Second, we have established a location. So, in order to for a startup, first we see that without location we cannot have like we cannot. It will be a very difficult because we need to find a certain kind of property where we are going to operate a startup. Now there are two kinds. Now we have physical and online. For example, Nika do not have. They started their startup through online. They came to like offline mode very much later, and that too only five or three stores have been opened in. If I'm not wrong, four or three stores have been open in a physical manner in Nika. So initially, Nika was a brand which was a startup for only the online platform, but later they have gone for physical. And before going to physical, we need to set up an office. So if we need to set up an office, that means we need to look after property. So whether you need to establish a manufacturing facility, set up an office space, or open a storefront, you'll want to determine if leasing or buying a property is right for us. In many cases, you can get tax deduction for managing a commercial space, which is a benefit to owning your own place. You'll also be able to rent it out to make extra income. In today's digital era, it is important to set up an online presence and e-commerce platform. In fact, you'll have a trouble being successful without it. This is because customers are increasingly shopping online using Google to find out more information on your product. On top of this, websites offer advantages like now, in the digitalized age, to say, if you are dreaming of starting up a startup, so we cannot avoid the online one because online is a platform where everyone gets connected globally. So your product sitting in India here, you can launch your product or you can advertise your product in any corner of the entire globe. In that manner, what happens is that our product, if you're going for product or you are going for any kind of stuff related to your startup, it is going to reach you. How it is going to reach the audience only through the online platform. So online marketing is very successful chain. That is why we should have physical and also online because people nowadays have them because online is the only way which can connect the people through entirely uh, hooked in corner of the world. So keeping your store open, yeah. Another advantage is that we can in offline what happens that here the store has a certain amount of time. For example, 9 a.m. to at least 4 p.m. or 10 a.m. But in online 24 hours, the people can search for your product, right? 24 hours, be it 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. So this actually gives you advantage of full access of your product 24 hours a day if you are going for an online platform. Helping you reach customers around the world, yeah. According to online, just like I have told that, we can actually reach the not only the targeted audience, we can inside the village anywhere because since now telecommunication company has have a habit that you can actually get your network in and around. If you have seen the Airtel advertisement, it says that you can get your network any corner of the world. So if you have network, you have internet access and 24 hour of internet access, and through it you can be able to reach your customers all around the world, allowing customers to read reviews about your product, which can raise your brand's credibility. You can enhance your online presence even more by starting a blog. This can help you establish yourself as an expert in your field. You can use search engine optimization to increase your brand's visibility to Google search And it's always a good idea to post on social media platform where your audience visits frequently. So today's age is the age of influencer. So you can also there are different kinds of influencers on social networking platforms. So with the help of influencer, you can actually enhance your product because you can see that paid partnership is given for your certain kind of product, and influencer is going to promote your product. So
Nice. Straight to the point. You lost your network. Net to busy.
Gimana bisa? Gimana bisa?
मोबाइल में चल रहा मोबाइल में चल रहा
Mobile.
मोबाइल में वाईफाई ऑफ कर लेंगे चलो मूवी से बोलिए नेट तो उसी को
Dia rasa tuh, dia rasa.
जस्ट
Gimana bisa? Kita
हां तो आपण स्क्रीन पर येतं थेट আছে तरी येतं আছে
Mana kali aku lebih kali.
नाला आहे ती
না না ভালো
Recording তো হয়ে আছে।
যে হচ্ছে
Recording হয়ে গেলে
confused है हाँ
aku aku sebenarnya terus now
now next we have number 7 point, developing a marketing plan. So every kind of startup that has reached successful have a marketing bondwas system. Develop number 7 point is developing a marketing skills. So you see all this, startup, the Hype, Paytm, Byju's, Oyo, Ola, Swiggy, and Big Basket. Now these are one of the India's most top startup companies. Now without the developing plan, marketing plan, you are not going to have success. It is because if you're going to have startup, and what everybody needs is that you have to enter the market. Now, Hike has entered the market. It was one of the competitors with Facebook, Instagram, etc. But Hike is slowly losing its market nowadays because in the market of social media, there are so many. One of the most famous downfall of marketing plan was your Orkut. So Orkut came in the area where there was no Facebook, no Instagram, and way before Facebook was not famous at the time when actually Orkut was reaching its height. Now Facebook has become so much famous that Orkut has to shut down their company. It is not in the marketing. Why? Why these failures have been? Because they don't have a proper marketing plan. Now, every startup needs to spend different amounts of money and time on marketing. This marketing is costly. Even advertisement, giving advertisement on paper will cost you quite amount of money. It is an important expense because it helps you establish a brand identity, stand out from competition, create customer relationship, and build loyalty. Increase visibility, which attracts new customers, strengthen your company's reputation. Now, one of the most marketing skill, if you see, Allen Institute, which is in Guwahati, right? Because they have developed a marketing plan, and their marketing plan is that the student of Allen has to wear the Allen clothes. They have to buy uniforms according to Allen. They have to even the umbrellas which is given by the Allen. They have to use those umbrellas. So by giving them everything, it's like they are actually marketizing their own coaching institute. Because if you see the students, they are going to have notebooks given by them. Even they are going to have like bags written Allen them, and even they are going to have the umbrella which is written by them, right? So this is their marketing plan. So without establishing the standard for competition, just like I have said that Orkut actually was a very upcoming social site network people used to use 10 years back, but this stood out from the competition because it could not sustain its marketing plan for a longer period of time. Same thing, you have Byju's is the learning app. So here, advertisement, if you see in ads, pop-up ads in YouTube, Byju's is nowadays a leading company in terms of edtech business. So now, because of their own marketing plan, increased visibility, which attracts new customers, strengthen your company's reputation. So now, the company's reputation among all the India startup is now high, has actually stood out from the competition slowly, and Byju's, Swiggy, and Oyo and Ola is rising up. Now we have build a customer base. For your startup business to have long-term success, you want to build a customer base. This loyal customers can help you with boosting your sales because you are willing to keep spending at your company, sending a message to new customers that your brand is trustworthy, gaining referrals which saves you time and effort with finding new customers. Some ways you can attract and retain customers include regularly offering a great product or services, launching loyalty programs to keep them coming in. Now you see regularly offering a great product or services. Amazon has done an excellent job in offering a great product or services. For example, if you're going to buy Amazon Prime, what is going to happen is that you are going to get your delivery in 1 day or 2 day very fast. Now they have maintained, not only they are attracting the customers to buy Amazon Prime, they are also attracting the customers that your delivery, we are going to deliver it in within 1 to 2 days with Amazon Prime. So Amazon Prime is actually doing a job of two with their one criteria that we are going to, if you buy Prime, we are going to give the product in 1 day or next day delivery. Launching loyalty program to keep them coming in. Not changing your product, right? Over the years, you see, not changing the hardware or the software. Now there are many tech companies which are rising because they are having loyalty programs. They are not changing anything. Using affiliate marketing on social media, which involves paying influencer to promote products to your target audience. Like I have told you, influencer is the best way nowadays in order to promote any kind of products that you want, because this is the age of influencer currently. Focusing on great customer services. Now, great customer services, for example, Indigo is one more flight which actually do not compromises with time. So there are other flights which came into market, but they have got because of their not great customer services. So Indigo is a flight, even if you delay it for 1 hour, they are going to make up the time. From the time Indigo has entered into the market till now, they one thing that is being constant is their time. They do not compromise with their time. So they are going to lead the passengers safely according to their time, and this is called consistency. If in our startup we are thinking about building up a startup, if we don't have consistency, then our startup is going to decline. We are going to go out from the market. Using market research to understand your customers' expectations better. So any product that is being launched, or any startup which are going to launch a certain kind of product, first and foremost, we have to understand the customer's requirement. Only when we can do a survey of customer requirement, that what are the things that are being required for the customers, or is our customers only the target customers? If it is a target customers, then what are the things that we should be concerned of? Based on this, it can help us in a marketing skill, and it can also help us reaching our audience. Asking for feedback directly from the customer. Now, in any kind of, be it startup or be it institution, feedback is very important because according to the feedback, we are going to work on that. Lastly, which is we have planned to change. Okay. Being consistent, being changing. Now, every day, day to day, we need to change with the trend. Now, if we don't remain consistent, if we don't adapt to the current scenario, what is going to happen? Our market is going to lose. So, startup change drastically within a few years in operation. Our key to success is to evolve and adapt your business model to your marketing industry. So, the demand. Now, everything runs upon demand and supply. So the demand of the if the demand of the audience come into being, then only we can have to evolve this also we are going to do. That is why there are lots of smartphone companies which has come into the market, right? Now, lots of companies have startup, lots of mobile has gone dry. Why companies mobile have gone dry? Why? Because one factor they have not evolved. Now there are, for example, Chinese phones. They actually evolved to a rate which is actually demanding, satisfying the thirst of the customers. Any kind of phones. So some strategies to make sure you're prepared to adapt are hiring forward thinkers so you know your team is adaptable. So once the in the market, Nokia was huge in the market. So after a certain time, because they have claimed that this thing that they are going to give the good battery power back. So if you still think about Nokia right now, what does it comes to your mind? The only thing that comes to mind is a good. The memories that we have with Nokia is that Nokia gives a good battery for 3 days for 1 days. Now, what happened to Nokia then? So lots of other competitors in the field of telecommunications have come into being. So when they come into being, they have come with new upgraded feature. Some phones are giving the camera like iPhone. So it is the only way to attract the customers. How? By evolving and adapting to the change in the environment. That means we have to have a good knowledge about the market, what is going on, what are the needs of the customers. That is why survey forms are very important. Listening to feedback from customers, suppliers, and others that we work with, staying updated on trends in our industry. Now, changing the trend is very important. What we need in our phones nowadays. Nowadays, everybody needs a phone with a good camera, right? So that is why all the other phones are being updated their camera. So people are focusing. For example, Oppo is only focusing on the camera. So as such, they have seen that the need for a good quality camera is increasing. So that is why in the market, if you see now these features have come that at small prices they are giving a very good camera, which was not a necessity 10 years back. Because 10 years back we used to run in small cameras with a very low megapixel. But now the demand of camera has increased. So that is called changing in trends. So staying updated on trends in our industry is very important for a successful startup. Now the next will be said by by Nikki ma'am. Next one. So one of the most successful startup which was seen by the startup of Oyo, the story of Oyo, how he this one idea has literally changed the entire scenario. Like the idea slogan has said that an idea can change up the entire world. So you see, he started this company in 2013. Founder Ritesh Agarwal, industry hospitality is related to Oyo, and now his current evaluation is $16 billion. So Ritesh Agarwal is the founder of unicorn startup Oyo has made Oyo one of the largest hotel chains in the world. So he saw that most of the hotels were actually lying just like that with no renovation, nothing. So what he did is that he bought all the hotels and they currently operate in more than 800 urban areas across countries like India, China, Brazil, Japan, United States, and 80 plus and more. Airbnb was the greatest motivation for Ritesh Agarwal, who began his journey as a traveler. And when he found a huge problem in the hotels, he took it as an opportunity to become an entrepreneur by solving up the problem. Like in the beginning, I have told that starting with an idea, we need to find a problem. What are the problem? And for the problem, we are going to find a solution. And if we find a solution, that's where the idea is going to generate from. So the next slides will be told by Nikki ma'am. Itu dulu.
Thank you, Jennifer ma'am, for discussing our startup in such a good way. I hope you will learn. So next, about the legal and ethical steps of startup. So in these chapters, what the objectives are: discuss the actions founders can take to establish a strong ethical culture in their entrepreneurial ventures. So how they can establish an ethical culture in their new entrepreneurship business. Next is describe actions taken in new firms to effectively deal with legal issues. So what are the legal issues a firm can face and how they can deal with it. Next is provide an overview of the business license and permits that a startup must obtain before it begins operating. So before we start anything, we should have the license of that business and permit. Then only we can do a startup. Next, the last of these objectives are identify and describe the different forms of organization available to new firms. So next we have initial ethical and legal issues facing a new firm. So what are the issues that can a new firm face? First is establishing a strong ethical culture. So whenever we do startup, we should have a strong ethical culture. Choosing an attorney, we must choose an attorney for the startup. Then drafting a founder's agreement. Agreement that the permission we must take before a startup, avoiding legal disputes, obtaining business license and permits, choosing a form of business organization. So these are the 6 initial ethical and legal issues that will be faced by a new firm. So establishing a strong ethical culture. So lead by example. The most important thing that any entrepreneur or team of entrepreneurs can do to build a strong ethical culture in their organization is to lead by example. So next is establish a code of conduct. A code of conduct or code of ethics is a formal statement of an organization values on certain ethical and social issues. So an organization must have a code of conduct, which is also known as code of ethics, must have as a formal statement for on certain ethical and social issues. So if they are facing any ethical and social issues, they must have a code of ethics or code of conduct of their own. Next is implement an ethics training program. Ethics training programs teach business ethics to help employees deal with ethical dilemmas and improve their overall ethical conduct. Next, an ethical dilemma is a situation that involves doing something that is beneficial to oneself or the organization but may be unethical. So, the ethical training we should implement in our programs, like ethics training programs, which teaches us business ethics, which will help the employees to deal with ethical dilemmas. So ethical dilemmas are ethical problems and improve their overall ethical conduct. So if they will have an ethical training program, they can deal with the ethical dilemmas and then improve their ethical conduct. Next is potential payoffs for establishing a strong ethical culture. So, strong ethical culture can be covered by potential avoidance of funds, better access to capital, improved brand reputation, improved employee commitment, improved customer loyalty, decreased vulnerability. So, these are the 6 steps for potential payoffs for establishing a strong ethical culture. Means better access to capital, we must access to better capital, improve brand reputation. So if the brand reputation is good, then there will be a strong ethical culture. Next is improve employee commitment, improve customer loyalty. We should be very loyal with the customer. Then only, if we are loyal with the customer, then only our brand will be reputed. Then improved employee commitment. Employees should be there from the beginning of the new firm so that they can commit it to that to that construction or the farm. So next is decreased vulnerability. Choosing an attorney for a firm. Select an attorney early. It is important for an entrepreneur to select an attorney as early as possible when developing a business venture. It is critically important that the attorney be familiar with startup issues. So, whenever we are going for a new firm, we must select an attorney early. It is important for any entrepreneur, whoever is going to start up anything, to select an attorney as early as possible before whenever they are going to plan to start a business venture. It is critically important that the attorney be familiar with startup issues. Next, intellectual property. For issues dealing with intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets, it is essential to use an attorney who specializes in this field. Intellectual property means wherever we are starting any startup, we must have our own trademark, our own patents. We don't have to copy anything because there is a copyright issue if you copy anything. So this should be done who are specialized in this field. Next is how to select an attorney. Contact the local bar association and ask for a list of attorneys who specialize in startups in your area. Select an attorney who is familiar with the startup process. Select an attorney who can assist you in raising money for your new venture. Make sure your attorney has a track record of completing his or her work on time. Talk about fees. Select an attorney that you understands your business. Learn as much about the process of starting a business yourself as possible. So these are the steps how to select an attorney. At the very beginning, we have to contact with local bar association and ask for a list of attorneys who are specialized in startups in our area. In the area we are going to start our business venture, we should contact the local bar association of that area and ask for a list of attorneys who have specialized in startups in that area. Interview several attorneys. We don't have to go for just one attorney, we have to interview several attorneys, then only you have to select one. And we have to select an attorney who are familiar with the startup process. We just go to anywhere, we have to see that they are familiar with that process or not. Then an attorney who can help in raising money for our new firm. Then make sure your attorney has a track record of completing his or her work on time. Talk about the fees. Then that attorney should understand your business also. Then only they can raise money for your new ventures. Learn as much about the process of starting business yourself as possible. Drafting a founders agreement. A founders agreement or shareholders agreement is a written document that deals with issues such as the relative split of the equity among the founders of the firm, how individual founders will be compensated for the cash or the sweet equity they put into the firm, and how long the founders will have to remain with the firm for the shares to fully vest. The items to include in the founders agreement are shown in the following slide. So in the draft, how to draft the founders agreement, what are the main thing we have to see is the founders agreement is also known as the shareholders agreement. And the written document that deals with the issues of the relative split of the equity among the founders of the firm, and how can individual founders will be compensated for the cash, which is also known as the sweet equity they put into the firm as a investment they do, and how long the founders will have to remain with that associated with that firm for their shares to fully vest. So the items which includes in a founder agreement are shown in the next slide. So partial list of items to include in a founders agreement. So what are the lists that we can include in a founders agreement? Nature of the prospective business, identify and propose titles of the founders, legal form of business ownership, apportionment of stock or division of ownership, consideration paid for stock or ownership share of each of the founders, identification of any intellectual property signed over to the business, description of how the founders will be compensated and how the profits in the business will be divided, provisions of resolving disputes, buyback clause. So these are the partial list of the founders agreement. So we must have to see that legal form of business ownership. We must have the legal form and to identify and propose the title of the founders and that nature of what is the nature of the business we are going to start. Then identification of intellectual property, it is a patent or trademark over the business. We have the provision of there may be disputes, so we have provision. We should have provisions for resolving that disputes. And then next is the description of how the founders will be compensated and how and the return profits they will get. The founders the profits how will they divide among themselves. And next is the buyback clause. So next is avoiding legal disputes. Avoiding legal disputes. Most legal disputes are the result of misunderstandings, copyless, or a simple lack of knowledge of the law. Getting bogged down in legal disputes is something an entrepreneur should work hard to avoid. There are several steps that an entrepreneur can take to avoid legal disputes. Meet all contractual obligations, avoid undercapitalization, get everything in writing, set standards. So there may be legal disputes, but an entrepreneur should try as much as possible to avoid such legal disputes. Most of the legal disputes why they arise because of misunderstanding or lack of knowledge of that law. So there are several steps that an entrepreneur can try to avoid their legal disputes that meet all contractual obligations, avoid undercapitalization, get everything right set standards. There should be standard, they maintain a standard in that business or they should get everything in writing format to have a record. So that is a contract. The first step is in avoiding legal disputes is contracts. Although it's tempting to try to show people you trust them by not insisting on written agreement, it's not a good practice. One of the simplest ways to avoid misunderstandings and ultimately legal dispute is to get everything in writing. So we may trust someone and may not have the writing agreements, but it's not a good practice. Before we start anything with someone or have a connection, we must have everything in writing format so that in future if legal dispute arise, we may have the record of that. Non-disclosure and non-compete agreements. Legal agreements that many firms ask their employees to sign. A non-disclosure agreement binds an employee or other party, such as a supplier, to not disclosure a company's trade secrets. So, non-disclosure agreement means we don't have to disclose anything in that. The agreement which you're signing, we don't disclose that. That may be an employee or other party like a supplier, which we do with the employee or with the supplier to not disclose a company's trade secrets. A non-compete agreement prevents an individual from competing against a former employee for a specific period of time. So a non-compete agreement means which prevents an individual, its main function, a non-compete agreement main function is to prevent an individual from competing against a former employer for a specific period of time. Obtaining business license and permits. Business license and permits, depending on the nature of the business may need local, state, or federal license and permits to operate. So how to obtain that business license and permits? It depends mainly on the nature of the business and what business we are doing. Depending on that, it may be solved by local permission, state permission, and a federal license and permits to operate. So next is, what is federal license and permits? Most business do not require a federal license to operate, but some do. Examples of business that require federal license and or permits to operate include business that sell or provide alcohol, tobacco, firearms, animal transport across state lines, commercial fisheries, and radio and television broadcasting. So, as we all know, what is federal license and permits? Most business, we do not need a federal license to operate, but some do. So, examples of business that require federal license and a permits to operate include business that sell or provide alcohol, tobacco, firearms, animal transport across state lines, commercial fisheries, and radio and television broadcasting. So, these are few examples of business which requires federal license and permits. Next is state license and permits. So in most states, there are three different categories of license and permits that you may need to operate a business. So state license, what state license and permits that includes? Business registration requirements. Some states require all new business to register with the state. Sales tax permits. Most states and communities require business that sell goods and in some cases services to collect sales tax and submit the tax to proper state authorities. Professional and occupational license and permits. In all states, there are laws that require people in certain professions to pass a state exam and maintain a professional license to conduct business. Examples include barbers, nurses, and real estate agents. So, these are three categories which includes whenever we go for a state license and permit. So what are the business registration requirements? Sales tax permits. Sales tax permits is like we collect the sales tax and submit the same to the proper channel of state authorities. This professional and occupational license, this includes that nurses, barbers, where they require people in certain professions to pass a state exam and maintain a professional license to conduct that business. Next is local license and permits. On the local level, there are two categories of license and permits that may be needed. So the first is to operate certain type of business, include childcare, barber shop and salons, hotels, etc. So second category is permit for engaging in certain type of activities, which includes example building permit, required if you are building or remodeling, health permit normally required if you are involved in preparing food, and signage permit may be required to erect a sign. So this 2 point is required for local license and permission. The two categories, which is first is to operate a certain type of business. So these examples like childcare, barber shops, salons, automotive repair, and hotels. This which requires certain type of business. These are local license and permit. The next category which required is that building permit, signage permit. So these are the two categories which requires a local license and permit. So next we have few additional requirements. If you plan to use a fictitious name for your business, in most cases you will need to obtain a fictitious business name permit, also called a DBA or doing business as. A fictitious name permit allows a business to operate under a fictitious name like Gold Coast Seafood or Red Rock Bakery. So, if we are going for a fictitious name for our business, in most cases, that fictitious base permit, which is also known as DBA or doing business as, to come under an additional requirements. So the few examples are given in that fictitious name are Gold Coast Seafood or Red Rock Bakery. So all business other than sole proprietorships that do not have employees are required to obtain a federal employee identification number, also called as EIN. So this all business other than sole proprietorship that do not have employees, they are mostly required to obtain a license or an identification number, which is known as Federal Employee Identification Number. So, and the easiest way to obtain this number is go to EIN, that is a website www.irs.com, and click on apply for EIN online. Choosing a form of business ownership. So whenever a business is launched, a form of legal entity must be chosen. The most common legal entities are sole proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, corporation. So these are the four most common legal entities. When a business is launched, a form of legal entity must be chosen. So these are the four: sole proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, corporation. Issues to consider in choosing a legal form of business ownership. So there are issues we consider in choosing whenever we choose a legal form in our business ownership. The cost of setting up and maintaining the legal form, the extent to which personal assets can be shielded from the liabilities of the business, tax consideration, the number and type of investors involved. So issues in the legal form, what the business ownership should see the points that the cost and setting that the cost they are setting up in that legal form and how they are maintaining. The extent how their personal assets can be shielded from the liabilities of the business. Next is tax consideration. The last one is the number and the type of investors are involved in that business. Next is sole proprietorship. The simplest form of business entity is the sole proprietorship. A sole A sole proprietorship is a form of business organization involving one person, and the person and the business are essentially the same. A sole proprietorship is not a separate legal entity. The sole proprietor is the responsible for all the liabilities of the business, and this is a significant drawback. So these are the three points for the sole proprietorship. Advantages and disadvantages we should see in a sole proprietorship. So first we see the advantages. Creating one is easy and inexpensive. The owner maintains complete control of the business and retains all of the profits. Business losses can be deducted against the sole proprietor's other sources of income. It is not subject to double taxation. The business is easy to dissolve. So these are the few advantages of having a sole proprietorship. So that whenever we create a sole proprietorship, it is easy and inexpensive, and the owner of that proprietorship gives a complete control of the business and retains all profits. If there is loss also, that can be deducted against the sole proprietor other business, other source of income. It is not subject to double taxation. And if there is any dispute also, it is easy in that business, it is easy to dissolve. Disadvantages of a sole proprietorship: liability of the owner's part is unlimited. The business relies on the skills and the abilities of a single owner to be successful. Of course, the owner can hire employees who have additional skills and abilities. Raising capital can be difficult. The business ends at the owner's death or loss of interest in the business. The liquidity of the owner's business investment is low. So these are the few disadvantages of a sole proprietorship. Raising capital can be very difficult. Like the business relies on the skill and abilities of a single-handed person. He may hire some employee, but mainly depends on single. The business ends at the owner's death or loss of interest in the business. Partnerships. If two or more people start a business, they must organize as a partnership, corporation, or a limited liability company. Partnerships are organized as either general or limited liability partnerships. General partnerships, a form of business organization where two or more people pool their skills, abilities, and resources to run a business. The primary disadvantage is that all partners are liable for the partnership's debts and obligations. Limited partnership, a modified form of general partnership. The major difference between the two is that partnership includes two classes of owners, general partners and limited partners. The general partners are liable for the debts and obligations of the partnership, but the limited partners are only liable to the amount of their investment. So the main difference, in partnership, there are two types of partnership, general and limited. And the main difference of these two are general partners are liable for the debts and obligations of the partnership, but the limited partners are only liable up to the amount of their investment. Advantages of a general partnership. Creating one is relatively easy and inexpensive compared to a corporation or limited liability company. The skills and abilities of more than one individual are available to the firm. Having more than one owner may make it easier to raise funds. Business losses can be deducted against the partner's other sources of income. It is not subject to double taxation. So these are the few advantages of a general partnership. Disadvantages of a partnership. Liability on the part of each general partner is unlimited. The business relies on the skills and abilities of a fixed number of partners. Of course, the owners can hire employees who have additional skills and abilities. Raising capital can be difficult because decision making among the partners is shared, disagreements can occur. The business ends with the death or withdrawal of one partner unless other stated in the partnership agreement. The liquidity of each partner's investment is low. So these are the few disadvantages of partnership. Corporation. A corporation is a separate legal entity organized under the authority of a state. Corporations are organized as either C corporations or subchapter S corporations. C corporation are what people think of one when they hear the word corporation. However, business startups are often organized as subchapter S corporation. So in a corporation, we have two types, C and S. So in C corporation are what most people think of when they hear the word corporation. But in business, startups are often organized as subchapter S corporations. C corporation is a separate legal entity that in the eyes of the law is separate from its owners. In most cases, a corporation shields its owners, who are called shareholders, from personal liability for the debts of the corporation. A corporation is governed by a board of directors which is elected. elected by the shareholders. A corporation is formed by filling articles of incorporation. Next, in C corporation, a corporation is taxed as a separate legal entity. The disadvantages of a C corporation is that it is subject to double taxation. This means that the corporation is taxed on its net income, and when the same income is distributed to shareholders in the form of dividends, the income is taxed again on the shareholders' personal tax returns. So, the main disadvantages in a C corporation is that it is subject to double taxation. This means a corporation in C corporation on its net income a tax is deducted, and again when the shareholder they distributed their profit, then also a personal tax return is imposed on C corporation. Advantages of C corporation. Owners are liable only for the debts and obligations of the corporation up to the amount of their investment. The mechanics of raising capital is easier. No restriction exists on the number of shareholders, which differs from subchapter S corporation. Stock is liquid if traded on a major stock exchange. The ability to share stock with employees through stock options or other incentive plans can be a powerful form of employee motivation. So these are the few advantages of a C corporation. Disadvantages of a C corporation: setting up and maintaining one is more difficult than for a sole proprietorship or a partnership. Business losses cannot be deducted against the shareholders' other source of income. Income is subject to double taxation, meaning that it is taxed at the corporate and the shareholder level. Small shareholders typically have little voice in the management of the firm. So main disadvantage as we consider in C corporation is that a double taxation is imposed. Double taxation on the net income and the profit that is there divided among the shareholders. Subchapter S corporation combines the advantages of a partnership, and a C corporation is similar to a partnership in that the income of the business is not subject to double taxation, and is similar to a corporation in that the owners are not subject to personal liability for the debts or behavior of the business. A subchapter S corporation does not pay taxes. Profits and losses are passed through the tax or return of the owners. Limited liability company. It is a form of business ownership that is rapidly gaining popularity in the US. Along with the subchapter S, it is a popular choice for startup firms. The limited liability company combines the limited liability advantage of the corporation with the tax advantage of a partnership. A limited liability company does not pay taxes. Profits and losses are passed to a tax return of the owners. So these are the few advantages of a limited liability company. Advantages it also includes a number of shareholders is unlimited because profits are taxed only at the shareholder level. There is no in limited liability company, as we can see, no double taxation is imposed on them. The main disadvantage is that tax accounting can be complicated. Some of the regulations governing vary by the state. Some states levy a franchise tax, which is essentially a fee paid the state for the benefit of the limited liability. So these are the few disadvantages of a limited liability company. So thank you. Next we'll proceed by Anila Shimir.
So what do we mean by ethical decision? So ethical decision making process, it is the process of choosing the best alternative for achieving the best result or outcome which individual and social issues, moral and regulations. So making good ethical decision to solve ethical dilemma
requires a trained sensitivity to ethical issues and a practice method of exploring the ethical aspects of a decision. Having a good method for ethical decision making is absolutely essential. It is most essential to make the ethical decision first. So ethical decisions should be based on ethical principles and codes rather than emotion, thoughts, and fixed policies. So what is the term ethical dilemma means? So ethical dilemma, it is a situation with uncertainty about what is right to do from a moral or ethical perspective. For example, you can say a manager of a company may be put in a position in which he must choose between the interest of his employees and his investors. A new technology is being launched which is good for the company as well as customers. But if this is brought into use, a lesser manpower is required for the organization. The entrepreneur is now an ethical dilemma whether he wants to better his clients with good services or to be loyal to his employees who have and helped to grow the company. So these are the 9 steps. So first step is this. First of all, we have to describe the problem. Secondly, determine whether it is an ethical issue or an ethical dilemma. Thirdly, we have to identify and rank the key values and principles. Fourth, we have to gather the more information. Fifth, review any applicable code of ethics. And sixth, determine the option. 7, select a course of action. 8, put your plan into action. And number 9, evaluate the result. The first one is we have to describe the problem. We must first describe the problem and ensure that it's actually a moral dilemma that needs to follow an ethical model. Consider the nature of the problem. Then we have to see what type of problem it is and any signs of problem and ensure that you are attempting to solve the issue and not just its side. Next one, circumstances affect a problem definition. For whom does the problem exist and what is the surrounding? Step number 2, determine whether it is an ethical dilemma. Dilemma becomes ethical when the good or bad options seem to have a moral component. For example, privacy versus avoidance of harm, freedom versus safety. Term of an ethical dilemma must be ethical in nature, not legal. If something is a law, you then have the ethical choice to follow the law or not. And third step is identify and rank the key values and principles. So what reason do you provide for prioritizing one's competing value over another? Understanding what a decision to a dilemma which goes against an individual person's set of values has very little chance of change. So number 4, gather more information. Do you have all the known facts? Do you understand the applicable laws or legalities? Do you have all relevant policies available to review? Are you clear about the individual views and personal values? Don't hesitate to seek out consultation. Step number 5, review the applicable code of ethics. So firstly, we have to see the mission statement, values base of the organization, ethical principles to guide practice, ethical standards. Codes can be revised. We have to use the codes which is updated as needed. And step number 6, determine the option. List all possible action options. Weigh the cost benefits of these options. Seek out additional points of view. Step number 7, select a course of plan. Remove the least desirable options. Remove any which you can put into action. Remove any options which break the value system of those affected. Recognize that your final choice will be impacted by your personal values. Recognize that your final choice will be impacted by your personal values. Step number 9, evaluate the result. Evaluate the cost of each person involved, client, family members, workers, etc. Consider submitting your most difficult cases to an ethics review board for feedback. Some ethical decision-making approaches. First one is utilitarian approaches. Moral behavior produces the greatest good for the greatest number. Number two, individualism approach. Acts are moral when they promote the individual based on interest, which ultimately leads to the greater good. Third, moral approach. Right approach decisions are those that best maintain the rights of those people affected by them. And fourth number is justice approach. Moral decision must be based on standard of equity, fairness, and impartiality. Decision making situation. These are some of the situations. First one is personal decision making. It is a part of our everyday life. Secondly, clinical decision making relates to quality of care and competency issues. Organizational decision making is choosing option directed towards the resolution of organization problem and the achievement of goals. The decision is very important when understanding its context. First, clarify the decision. Make sure everyone has the same understanding of what is being decided. Secondly, categorical interpretation. The problem should be defined properly. Next, adequate information. More quantity of information leads to effective decision making. If you do not have enough information, it can feel like you are making a decision without any basis. Then lastly, timeliness. Decision making should be at a proper time to meet the competitive advantages. Takes plenty of time to make the decisions, gathering considerable information and analyzing several alternatives. Who is responsible for creating ethics in an organization? A company's manager plays an important role in establishing its ethical tone. If manager behaves as if the only thing that matters is profit, employees are likely to act in a like manner. A company's leader are responsible for setting standard for what is and is not acceptable for employees' behavior. It's vital for managers to play an active role in creating a working environment where employees are encouraged and rewarded for acting in an ethical manner. Importance of business ethics. The first important is public expects business to exceed high levels of ethical performance and social responsibility. Secondly, encouraging business firms and their employees to behave ethically as is to prevent harm to society. Promoting ethical behavior is to protect business from abuse by unethical employees or unethical competitors. And high ethical performance also protects the individual who work in business. There are some principles of admirable business ethics. First one is leadership. The conscious effort to adapt, integrate, and emulate the other 11 principles to guide decisions and behaviors in all aspects of professional and personal life. Next, accounting, holding yourself and others responsible for their actions. Commitment to the following ethical practice and ensure others follow ethics guidelines. Integrity, incorrupts other principle, honesty, trustworthiness, and reliability. Someone with integrity consistently does the right thing and strives to hold themselves to a higher standard. Next one, respect for others. To foster ethical behavior and environment in the workplace, respecting others is a critical component. Everyone deserves dignity, privacy, equality, opportunity, compassion, and empathy. Honesty. Truth in all matter is key to fostering an ethical climate. Partial truth, omissions, and understating don't help a business improve its performance. Bad news should be communicated and received in the same manner as good news so that solution can be developed. And lastly, respect for laws. Ethical leadership should include enforcing all local, state, and federal laws. If there is a legal gray area, leaders should be on the side of legality rather than exploiting a gap. Next one, responsibility. Promote ownership within an organization. Allow employees to be responsible for their work and be accountable for yours. Transparency. Stakeholders are people with an interest in a business, such as stakeholder employs the community a firm operates in, and the family members of the employees. Without trade secrets, and companies should ensure information about their financial, price changing, hiring, and hiring practices. Next one is compassion. Employees the community surrounding a business partner, and customers should be treated with concern for their well-being. Next one, fairness. Everyone should have the same opportunity and be treated the same. If a practice or behavior should make you feel comfortable or place personal or corporate benefit in front of equality of loyalty, leadership should demonstrate confidentially and commitment to their employees and the company. Environmental concern. In a world where resources are limited, ecosystems have been damaged by past practices and the climate is changing. It is the utmost importance to be aware of. Conclusion, ethics are important not only in business but in also aspects of life because it is an essential part of the foundation in which of the civilized society is built. A business or society that lacks ethical principle is bound to fail sooner or later. So ethics is a guiding principle that influences a positive outcome through our decisions and actions. Ethics helps us tell right from wrong, good from bad. It gives practical guidance to our lives. In many cases, ethical regulates our way of living and helps us live in a society with peace and harmony with others. Ethics is what defines us as humans. So here we are ending our session. So I hope that this session was really helpful for you all. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining. So now we are ending our session here. So now we are ending our session here. I hope that this session was really helpful for you all. So thank you everyone. Thanks for joining.